On the far edge of the village stood a large pig farm, neat and clean, owned by a woman everyone called Madame Ekun. The farm was doing too well. Her pigs grew fat in little time, their skins smooth, their bodies heavy like they were fed blessings instead of feed. Traders came from distant towns just to buy them. At first, people joked about it. They laughed and said Madame Ekun had special hands or secret knowledge. But the laughter didn't last long. Mothers began to hold their babies tighter. Women complained that someone was always watching them on the path to the stream or the market. Sometimes, the pigs squealed at night like crying children. And whenever someone asked Madame Ekun the secret of her success, she only smiled. Madame Ekun was the kind of woman people greeted twice, just to be safe. She was wealthy, powerful, and carried herself like someone who had never begged for anything in her life. When her car passed, conversations stopped. When she spoke, people listened. No one knew much about her past, only that she had no children and had buried 3 husbands. Some said sickness took them. Others said bad luck followed any man who slept beside her. Madame Ekun never explained. She never defended herself. She only smiled that small, quiet smile that never reached her eyes. She dressed well, always neat and elegant. Her pig farm was her pride. It employed many men from the village, but no woman was ever allowed beyond the gate. If asked why, she would laugh lightly and change the topic. People admired her success, yet they feared her silence. The first woman to disappear was a young mother named Amara. She had given birth barely 3 months earlier and was still learning how to carry her baby on her back without pain. That evening, she went to the river with her clay pot, just as she had done many times before. She never returned. At nightfall, her baby was found by the riverside, crying until its voice grew hoarse. The water pot lay on its side, cracked, with water slowly sinking into the sand. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, only silence. The whole village searched. Men entered the forest with cutlasses. Women called Amara's name until their throats burned. Madame Ekun sent money for the search and food for the volunteers. Some people praised her kindness. Others found it strange. When Amara was not found, the elders spoke. They said the forest spirits were angry and demanded respect. Sacrifices were made, prayers were said. After that, women stopped walking alone. Mothers moved in groups, babies tied tightly to their backs. Still, weeks later, another breastfeeding woman disappeared. This time, there was no river pot, just fear. Whispers filled the air. My name is Sade, and this is how I woke up. The room was dark and smelled of damp earth. The walls were made of mud, thick and cold against my back. My wrists ached, and when I tried to move, I realized the door was locked from the outside. Panic rose in my chest like fire. I was not alone. Other women sat along the wall, some crying softly, others staring into space like their souls had already left. Our breasts were heavy and painful with milk. Twice a day, guards came. They gave us warm herbal soup that tasted bitter and sweet at the same time. After drinking it, the pain in our breasts worsened. That was when we learned why we were there. They led us to the pig pens. The piglets were brought close to us, pink and fat, their mouths open. We were forced to feed them with our own bodies. I cannot describe the shame, the horror, the way my stomach turned. The pigs were quiet, almost gentle, their eyes fixed on us like they understood too much. One guard whispered, "Feed them well, or your children will suffer." At night, we heard chanting, low voices speaking words I could not hear clearly. Sometimes blood was poured into the pig troughs, and the pigs squealed like babies. Madame Ekun stood nearby, watching. She never spoke. Her face showed no anger, no joy, only calm, and that calm was the most frightening thing of all. Years before the farm became famous, Madame Ekun had visited a traditional healer in a far village. People said she went there thin, angry, and desperate. She grew up poor, the kind of poverty that follows you into your dreams. Hunger shaped her childhood, and shame hardened her heart. She swore never to return to that life. The healer told her the truth she wanted to hear. He said pigs fed with stolen mother's milk would multiply wealth and power. No bank would fail her. No business would collapse. From that day, the pigs were no longer just animals. They became offerings to her fear of poverty. Mr. Kohler was not a rich man, but he was observant. He taught history at the village school and spent his free time reading old folklore and forgotten stories. When the disappearances began, something bothered him deeply. He noticed a pattern no one wanted to say out loud. Only breastfeeding mothers went missing. No old women, no young girls. Only women with babies still feeding from them. Around the same time, Madame Ekun's wealth had grown beyond reason. Mr. Kohler remembered stories his grandmother once told him, stories about stolen life force and farms built on human suffering. Fear became real when his wife gave birth to their first child. He stopped sleeping well. At night, every sound outside made him sit up. He began watching the pig farm from a distance. One night, under the weak light of the moon, he saw shadows moving. Women were being led from one building to another, their heads covered, their steps slow. Mr. Kohler felt his stomach drop. The stories were no longer stories. One night, a woman named Ifeoma decided she could not bear it any longer. She whispered to the others, "I'll find a way out." Her heart pounded like a drum as she crept past the guards, careful not to make a sound. The moonlight guided her to the edge of the farm, where a rusty fence separated the pens from the forest beyond. Freedom was just a step away. Her hands gripped the cold metal, her baby's cries echoing in her mind, giving her strength. But a shadow moved faster than she expected. A guard grabbed her from behind. She struggled, but he held her firm, and soon she was dragged back. The punishment was not whips or chains, it was worse. Madame Ekun appeared at the gate, calm as ever, carrying Ifeoma's own baby. She placed the child in full view, saying nothing, just letting the mother stare. The terror in Ifeoma's eyes was enough. She fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The other women watched, paralyzed, hope drained from their hearts. From that night on, no one tried to escape again. Mr. Kohler could no longer sit quietly. One evening, under the cover of darkness, he hid near the farm with a small recorder, capturing every sound, the faint cries, the whispers, the uneasy shuffle of women's feet. He found a junior guard who could not sleep under the weight of what he saw. With a few coins and careful words, Mr. Kohler convinced him to give more than information access to one of the locked buildings. The recordings leaked anonymously online. Reddit threads lit up with horror. People listened to the terrified women, their voices trembling in the dark. Outrage spread fast, even reaching journalists and activists in the city. Finally, the police acted. They arrived in the dead of night, breaking gates and doors. The locked rooms were opened. Women who had not seen daylight in weeks stumbled into freedom, weak and shaking. The pigs, once unnaturally fat and silent, were corralled and slaughtered immediately. Some bled black. Their squeals echoed long into the night, mixing with the whispers of the freed women. For the first time, Madame Ekun's farm was no longer untouchable. The power she had held so tightly began to crumble. Madame Ekun did not resist. She was calm, even smiling, as officers led her away. Her eyes never left the women, following every step. "You all enjoyed the meat," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of a warning. She revealed what shocked everyone. Many respected villagers, officials, and even some priests had known. They had stayed silent, choosing comfort over courage. She pointed out their guilt, without anger, only cold truth. As the mothers were freed, she leaned back and whispered, "The village is just as guilty as I am." Her smile lingered in their minds long after she was gone, a reminder that evil often walks alongside respectability. The survivors returned home, but their laughter never returned. Some children refused to eat pork, screaming at the sight of it. Mothers watched their babies with new fear, haunted by memories of the farm. The land where Madame Ekun's pigs once roamed was left to rot. Crops refused to grow, the soil hard and dry. Even the strongest trees seemed to bow away from the empty pens. Till today, no one raises pigs in that village. Mothers walk only in groups, clutching their children close, and after sunset, silence is kept, for no one dares tempt the memory of Madame Ekun's farm. Thanks for watching.